I'm going to show you a really quick idea to make some beautiful Christmas tree cards using simple materials. They're really beautiful, they're textured, they're 3D, and they're very, very easy to make though. And you will need a sewing machine for this project, as well as some simple materials. So the first thing you need is a card blank, obviously. Might need a few of those if you're going to make a batch of these. You need some paper scissors, pencil, ruler. Don't need a biro, don't know why that's there. You need some tape. This is washi tape. This is a colour that I don't like, something that isn't going to stick to your paper. Some rough paper to make a template, and then all sorts of coloured papers, patterned papers. I've got pieces from magazines, I've got some wrapping paper, that's a newsletter that I've painted with some watercolours. I've got some old sheet music, a bit of an old road atlas, and that's a jelly print where I was cleaning off my plate, and then I've just added some paint over the top, some watercolour. So anything just lightweight, because we are going to be stitching through. So the first thing you need to do is make a template. So fold your piece of paper in half. This is a piece of A4 scrap paper. And make sure you make nice neat creases. Make sure it's folded accurately. So now I'm folding it again into quarters, making sure that those corners match up, and then making a nice firm crease. And then I want to fold it again into thirds. So I'm just doing this by eye, just trying to get those folds nice and even, to fold it in thirds like that. And then when you're certain you've got it folded correctly, just crease neatly as well. And then I've got my card blank back because I want to just check how it's going to fit, and like that it's going to be a bit tall for the card blank, so I'm just cutting off 1 centimetre from one end and just try it again. So that's a much better size. I've got room now for the trunk of the tree and for a sequin on the top. And then unfold your paper and you can see all the creases hopefully, and we just need to join up the top left corner to the bottom right corner across two of those narrow rectangles that we've created. It's easy once you get going. It takes me a while to get my eye in. You can use a pencil to mark where those creases are if you're having trouble seeing where they are. And then just carry on joining them all up. The lines should cross where that central fold is. Try and do this as accurately as you can. And you should end up with a sheet with lots of little interlocking triangles. And then you need to cut them out. You don't need to cut them all out, you need to cut out at least one, and that's the size of the trees that we're going to make. And a quick check, yeah, I think that looks good. It's a nice shape and size. So now I can go ahead and I can start to trace my Christmas trees onto my coloured paper. So I use up all sorts of bits and pieces for doing this, and just remember to turn your paper over to the wrong side to position your template. And I'm lining it up with the straight edge. I know I've got a straight cut edge there, so I'm lining up my triangle with that edge, and then just making a few marks all the way around, in particular getting that point of the tree nice and accurate. And then I'm going to join those marks up with a ruler and then cut out. So that's one, tree number one, and we're going to need quite a few. So you can carry on using just that single template and cut out your trees one by one. If you're only making a handful of cards, you can do that because you want to have lots of different papers, so you're only going to need 1 or 2 trees from each paper to depending on how many cards you're making. But if you're going into batch production, if you're making quite a few, it's quite useful to cut out lots all in one go. So I'm getting my template back and just having a quick count up to see how many I can cut out. So I think where I'm cutting there, that will give me a dozen more trees. So now I can use that template, and then I can just mark on the paper where those intersections are, join them up with a ruler and cut them out in a moment. And for this piece of wrapping paper, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to cut down my template a little bit further. So the bit I'm cutting out here, that would give me 4 trees. But you can see it's not quite going to fit on to that piece of paper, which is a bit frustrating. But it will fit on this. So I'm going to use it on this piece of painted paper. So I'm just choosing the area that I want to use, and then carefully flipping over the paper, remembering where that place is, and just drawing round. I'm not drawing around all of it, I'm just making marks along those long edges. In particular, I'm marking where that line is, where the tops of the triangles are and the bases of the triangles, where it all meets up. And then I'm going to use a ruler to join up those marks so I get nice straight edges on my triangles, and then I can cut out accurately. So I'm going to carry on doing that. I'm going to get as many trees as I can from my different coloured papers. So I'm just putting the template back on there just to mark where that point there is, so that I can then recreate those triangles accurately. And then I'm going to try and get as many triangles as I can out of the scraps as well. See if I can use these tiny bits. If I can't use up all the scraps, they go back in the box for a different sort of collage. But I'm going to carry on cutting out my triangles and building up my little collection of Christmas trees. And when you use a magazine picture like this one here, just be careful that when you cut out your triangles, you get the bit of the picture that you want, because we're drawing the lines on the wrong side. Just make sure that you get the particular bit of the picture that you want on the front. So you can see as I'm cutting out, I'm creating little stacks of trees, and that's me trying to get a variety of different papers for each little pile of trees. And I reckon that you need about 6 or 7. I used 7 in all of my trees altogether, so 7 different paper trees for each card. So for this video I'm just going to make one, but I was just carrying on cutting out some paper while I had everything out on my desk. So a quick count up, see how many I've got, and I'm trying to get a variety of colours, some light, some dark, some green, some multicoloured. So altogether that's my 7 now, so they are ready to go, so I can tidy up all the other bits and pieces that I don't need just yet. Let's move those all out of the way. So I've got a nice little stack of papers there to use for some more trees later on. So I've got my template back again, and if you look at the one I did before, I need to leave enough room to put a sequin on the top. So if I fold that template in half, I can just mark where that halfway point is on the card. I can also mark where the trunk's going to go, and then I'm making a tiny little mark where the top of the tree is going to go. That's just with a pencil, and that will get covered in stitch in a moment. So the base of the tree, the first piece of paper, that's the only one that's going to be stuck down. So I'm just using a dry glue stick, and then I'm going to carefully position that where I want it on the card, pressing down when I've got it in the right place. So I need to make sure it's straight, I need to make sure the base is lined up with the base of the card, and that the tree is nice and central, but there's still enough room to put that sequin on the top and to stitch the trunk. And then before you do the next bit, you should really let that dry, because in a moment we're going to the sewing machine and we don't want to stitch through wet glue. And now it's a case of choosing the order that the other papers are going to sit in. So I'm trying to get a mix, light, dark, nice colours, get a nice variety, so that when they fan out it creates a nice mix. And I like to have something on the top, the very top tree, that doesn't have any text or music or a particular picture. So I've gone for that blue and green tree, just something a bit more abstract. If you had text, so some pages from a book or something like that on the top, there's the temptation then to try and read it. So those things are best put in the stack where you're only going to see one half at a time. So that's the order I've chosen, and make sure they're all lined up with the points all matching. That's the most important bit. Doesn't matter if the sides aren't perfect, as long as the points all match up. And then you need your washi tape, and I've already got some lengths here that I've cut. And just carefully, without moving the papers, just stick down those bottom corners, but leave a gap at the bottom. You don't want those tapes to touch at the bottom, because we're going to be stitching from the top to the bottom of the tree, straight down the middle. And then the bobbin thread is a neutral thread. There's only going to be one line of stitch that shows on the inside there. And then for the top, I've got a darker turquoisey machine embroidery thread, so that that trunk will show up. But I also want to use this green sparkly thread, because, you know, it's nice to have a bit of sparkle. When I used the green thread on its own, it was a bit light. It didn't really show up at the base of the tree. So I'm going to use both the dark and the light thread together. So to thread your machine with two threads, you need to do them one at a time. So that one's going on the vertical spool holder, and then I'm passing the thread carefully down the right hand side of the tension discs, and then through the take-up lever and down to the thread catches at the bottom. I'm not threading the needle yet. I'm going to do the second thread, so that's going on the horizontal spool holder, and then I'm going to carefully pass that thread down the left hand side of the tension discs. Always have the presser foot up, by the way, when you're threading your machine, to make sure those discs are open and the thread can slot in. And then I can now gather the two threads together and I can thread the needle with both. The idea is that by passing each thread down either side of the tension discs, each thread is then going to be held securely, and this should help minimize any loops that you get from using those two threads. Each thread should be held nicely in the tension discs. And then with the card, make sure you've got all your threads there, the bobbin thread, the two top threads. Hold them with your fingers so they don't get sucked into the race. Position the needle where you want to start, which is at the base of the tree, pointing towards the top, and then lengthen your stitch length. I've got mine almost as long as it will go. You don't want too many holes, so a few stitches to anchor your threads, and then reverse off onto the card to do the trunk, and then full steam ahead towards the top of the tree, making sure that you stitch all the way up to the very tip, and then just one stitch over the top, and then stop with the needle down, lift the presser foot, turn round, and at this point you might be able to reach to the underneath, and if you pull on the bobbin thread you should maybe be able to pull the threads through. I wasn't able to, so I'll deal with those in a minute. And then all the way back down to where you started. Stop with the needle up. So I'm going to lift the needle and then lift the presser foot and pull away. And once again I can pull on that bobbin thread from where I just finished and pull the threads through. And on the top, because they wouldn't pull through, it's safe to just cut them off. And on the back I'm just going to knot those threads securely. I just do a granny knot, and then I can trim those. And then when you've trimmed your threads, carefully remove the tape from the tree. Be really careful not to rip the paper or the card. And then it's very tempting, isn't it, to start to fold up those pieces of paper. So just do this carefully, one at a time. Fold them one side at a time into the centre and just fold down with your finger, just crease down with your finger to make a nice neat crease. When you put the card in an envelope, you'll obviously have to put it all flat, but if they've been pre-creased, then the recipient should be able to see what they need to do. And then all you need to do is add your sequin. So I am using this very old bottle of tacky glue. The nozzle is all clogged up, so now I have to use a skewer to reach down into the bottom of the bottle to what glue is left in the bottom. And I'm not going to put that straight onto the card, it will make a mess. So I'm going to grab a cocktail stick and get some glue on the tip of the cocktail stick and just use that. You need enough glue so that the sequin sticks on, but not so much that it oozes out of the side. It should dry clear, but even so I want to avoid having any glue on the surface of the card. So this is a bit of a delicate operation. Take your time and just really carefully with the other end of the cocktail stick, just very, very gently press down on that sequin to make sure that it's in the right place, and then leave it to dry completely. And there you are, job done.